They say the imperial palace in Rome was built on blood, but it was run on secrets. Power in that age was not merely a crown, it was a knife, a poison cup, and a whisper on the wind. It was the absolute damning capacity to turn the opulent halls of the Caesars into a theater of flesh, where the empress was both the star performer and the executioner. Imagine Rome, 48 AD, the zenith of the imperial age, a city drowning in gold and marble, yet starving for true virtue. Picture the Palatine Hill. On any given night, the air here was thick with the smoke of sacred incense, the heavy perfume of exotic blossoms, and the much darker, unmistakable scent of unpunished sin. This was the court of the Emperor Claudius, a man of stutter and scholarship, made a puppet by the very people he trusted most. And at the center of this viper's nest of politics stood his wife, a woman whose name would forever be a byword for debauchery and damnation, Valeria Messalina. She was an empress, yes, a mother to the heir Britannicus, but the whisper that haunted the Roman Forum was far darker. She was the Meretrix Augusta, the whore empress, and her final, most audacious act was about to ignite a scandal so profound it would shatter the imperial household and paint the pristine marble of her downfall red. What if the most guarded secret in the empire wasn't hidden in the vaults, but in the brazen, smiling defiance of a young woman's face? The princess was indeed in peril, but that peril was a snare of her own masterful making. Background and rise, a gilded cage. To understand the horror of her end, we must first look at the paradox of her beginning. Messalina was born into the very heart of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, a web of celebrated names that had by her time become hopelessly tangled with madness. Her second cousin, the capricious monster Caligula. She married Claudius when she was perhaps barely 20, and he, a man 2 decades her senior, was the forgotten uncle, a bookish, limping intellectual the family kept safely in the shadows. But when Caligula was assassinated in a bloody spectacle, the Praetorian Guard, in a chaotic twist of fate, dragged the trembling elderly Claudius from behind a curtain and crowned him emperor. Messalina, overnight, stepped from the gilded cage of a noble daughter into the sunlit, terrifying throne of an empress. She had the beauty, the lineage, and now she possessed the unassailable shield of the emperor's name. But the court was a hungry beast. She immediately faced rivals, other women of the royal line, and the powerful, ambitious freedmen who surrounded Claudius. To survive, Messalina became a student of Roman power. She learned that a woman could not openly wield the sword, but she could master the poison of influence. The whispers began almost instantly. Whispers of secret trysts. Whispers that she demanded the death of Claudius's niece, Julia Livilla, and others who stood in her way. Whispers that her political alliances were not forged in the Senate, but in the bedchambers of the elite. But these were just whispers. Then came the story that cemented her legend. A tale so shocking it has defined her image for 2 millennia. The contest. The empress, they claimed, would sneak out of the palace, wigged and disguised, to work in the very brothels of the Subura, the city's filthy, riotous underbelly. And there, against Rome's most notorious and hardened prostitute, a woman named Sylla, Messalina allegedly competed, a perverse, grueling marathon of sexual endurance, a dark spectacle held not for pleasure, but for unholy domination. And the history records it. Messalina won. Why? Why would the empress, the mother of the heir, risk everything for such a grotesque performance? Was it pure, insatiable lust, or was it something far colder? A ruthless, calculated move to possess and control a terrifying, unprecedented form of scandalous power, to prove that no one, absolutely no one, was untouchable. She had humiliated the prostitute. She had humiliated her husband. She had humiliated the entire concept of Roman modesty. And she was still the empress. The dark secret, it seemed, was that her power was immune to shame. Coarse scandal and humiliation, the wedding of treason. This immunity, however, was about to be put to the ultimate test. By the year 48 AD, Messalina was no longer content with mere adultery and elimination of rivals. Her newest lover was Gaius Silius, a senator of staggering handsomeness, wealth, and crucially, ambition. Ancient writers paint a picture of Messalina and Silius consumed by a feverish, brazen passion. But what happened next transcended passion. It became open, undeniable treason. Claudius traveled to Ostia to inspect the new harbor works. The palace guard was thin. The time was ripe. Picture the scene. Rome, on a day meant for sun and sacrifice. In a grand gesture that defied every law, every custom, and every ounce of common sense, Messalina and Gaius Silius held a full, public, and legally binding marriage ceremony. They exchanged vows. They signed the contract. They performed the solemn rites. A legitimate marriage to a senator while the actual emperor still lived and reigned. This was not a tryst. This was a coup. This was a challenge to the entire structure of the empire. This was a statement. The empress has chosen a new Caesar. The news did not crawl. It raced back to Ostia, carried not by loyal friends of Claudius, but by the nervous, now terrified freedmen, the very men Messalina had scorned and threatened. Narcissus, the powerful imperial secretary, delivered the damning report. The reaction of the aged emperor was not rage. It was a blank, disbelieving confusion. Claudius, ever slow to comprehend the vicious realities of his court, asked, "Is my Messalina truly married?" Narcissus, a master of court intrigue and a survivor, knew this window of confusion had to be slammed shut. He ordered the execution of Silius and his co-conspirators before Claudius could recover his senses or, worse, forgive his wife. Meanwhile, Messalina was in the gardens of Lucullus, a luxurious estate she had schemed to acquire through a previous elimination. This became the stage for her final humiliation. The air thickened with a terrible silence. Messalina was there, with her mother, Domitia Lepida. No guards, no lovers, no crowds. The noise of the city, the chaos of the Senate, it all seemed to vanish, leaving only the rustle of the garden leaves and the hollow beating of her heart. She begged her mother for an honorable exit, a Roman suicide. Her mother, cold and pragmatic, simply said that she had lived only for pleasure, and now she must face the consequences. 3 times Messalina raised the dagger to her throat. 3 times her hand faltered. This empress who commanded the deaths of senators, who competed with whores, who brazenly crowned a new husband, could not summon the courage to end her own life. The woman who had mastered power failed at self-mastery. The warriors arrived. Not the full Praetorian Guard with ceremony, but a tribune and a centurion sent by Narcissus to finish the job. They found her, the Empress of Rome, huddled in the grass, weeping. The tribune demanded she take the final honorable choice. She could not. He pushed the blade home. Climax and aftermath, the damnatio memoriae. On the road back to Rome, Claudius was handed the news. Messalina was dead. The ultimate paradox. The emperor, sitting at a banquet, heard that the mother of his children, the wife he had publicly ignored, had been murdered on his command. Ancient sources record his reaction. He merely asked for more wine. He showed no emotion, no tears, no inquiry. Was it shock? Was it the final, utter relief of a man who had survived a political viper? Or was it the bitter realization that he was a victim of his own profound naivete? The history does not know. But in that chilling moment of silence, the empire watched a puppet master be destroyed by her own deadly strings. The consequences were swift and total. The Senate voted for a damnatio memoriae, the damnation of memory. Her statues were shattered, her name was chiseled from all public inscriptions. She was to be utterly erased. They stripped her of her children and her name, leaving only the monstrous legend. But the effort to erase her failed. The scandal was too spectacular, the debauchery too vivid. The memory of Messalina survived because it served a purpose. It was a chilling, sensational, cautionary tale.
It is here we must pause and ask, was she truly the monster the history books painted, or was she simply an ambitious young woman operating in a vicious, overwhelmingly male court, using the only weapon available to a woman, her sex, her influence, and the threat of scandal, to secure the future of her son Britannicus? The warrior's grin, that final terrifying, mocking defiance of her public life, hid the dark secret not just of her personal vices, but of a court where a woman had to be a villain just to be a player. The gardens of Lucullus were quiet once more. The stench of sin was swept away, but the blood remained, sinking deep into the Roman soil. Messalina's story is a haunting, timeless warning. It tells us that in the pursuit of absolute power, the line between scandal and strategy is not just thin, it is often erased entirely. Her dark secret was that she understood this truth faster and more ruthlessly than any man around her. She was willing to use her shame as a tool, only to be undone when her political partners proved less loyal than her lovers. What power still thrives today on the scandal of others? Look at the headlines, the courtrooms, the corridors of modern power. The viper's nest is still there. The theater still runs. The Messalinas of history remind us that the greatest humiliation is not always what is done to you, but what you are willing to do to yourself and others in the name of staying on the throne. She was executed. Her name was destroyed. Yet 2,000 years later, we still speak her name, Valeria Messalina, the woman who challenged Rome's morality and proved that the dark side of power is a mirror, and sometimes the face looking back is far uglier than the one who holds the sword.